Hello and good evening. Welcome to another Classic Comics Saturday night live stream. I want to thank everyone who's listening, both listening during the stream and afterwards on the replay. Now, before I go any further, I want to preface this by pointing out that this is going to be kind of an impromptu stream. I actually I've been very busy today and just got home like an hour and a half ago and was kind of like, what am I going to talk about? But what I think I'll talk about is mainly I'm going to start off talking about Wizards of the Coast and this whole open gaming license controversy. I have talked about it before, but it's kind of kept going. So I'll talk about that a bit. And then I want to talk about actually about the history of TSR, the company that originally published D&D. I'm actually reading a book about that, and it's got some interesting information. So I'm going to talk about that some. And then if there's time, I'll talk about Comixology and the layoffs taking place there, thanks to Amazon. And then wrap it up with a little super team family. So, as you probably know, couple of weeks ago, Wizards of the Coast published a new open gaming license. And let me bring this website up here. Okay. So a couple of weeks ago, they announced that they were going to be publishing a new version of their OGL, their open gaming license. But then it leaked out, I think a bit early. And it wasn't something I think that was supposed to happen, and I think it maybe caught them a bit off guard to the open gaming license. In particular, the big things I think is that one, they were going to start now taking royalties from certain parties. Basically, if you were making, I think it's if you're making more than 750,000 a year using the open gaming license, they were going to start collecting royalties on your work, and I don't remember the exact percentage. And then another big thing was that they were now going to start claiming ownership of any intellectual property, any material that was created by other publishers using the gaming license. In other words, if you use the OGL to create another RPG setting, let's say, and then that setting hit it off, well, technically, under the new rules of the OGL, they could then basically claim ownership of that setting and then start publishing that stuff themselves. And another thing I think that upset quite a few people is that they were making this retroactive, where not only was it going to affect products that were going forward, but they were also going to start uh, having this affect old publications that had been published under the original agreement. And of course, a lot of people got upset, particularly a lot of other publishers, like third party publishers like Paizo and Cobalt Press and whatnot, got really upset because this would like basically wreck their business. And also, a lot of players were not happy too. And so there was pushback. And then, then Wizards of the Coast. And I'm gonna say Wizards of the Coast. I may sometimes say Hasbro, but they're the same thing. I mean, Hasbro owns Wizards of the Coast, and it's the same people running both companies. It's the same type of people. Chris Cox, who is the president of Hasbro right now, he used to be the head of Wizards of the Coast before he was promoted to be the president of Hasbro. And he's a former Microsoft guy, former Microsoft employee. And Cynthia Williams, who's currently the president of Wizards of the Coast and therefore over Dungeons and Dragons, she's also a former Microsoft employee. So, I mean, it's the same mentality, it's the same viewpoint. So I may say Wizards of the Coast, I may say Hasbro. But anyway, so Hasbro then put out basically a sort of half-arsed apology, uh, which basically was like, it basically the equivalent of, well, we're sorry you're upset, you know, I'm sorry you're upset that what I did upset you, or something like that. And of course, one of the things they did was they virtue signaled, and they claimed that, oh, all we were trying to do was make sure that our open gaming license isn't used to create content that contains like hateful and bigoted language. We're just trying to protect marginalized communities, all the usual woke virtue signaling crap that all these freaking corporations do. I mean, they all friggin' do it, even though they're talking this crap over here. Meanwhile, they're making billions off of slave labor over in Asia, over in China, whatever. And fortunately, for the most part, the gaming community seemed to not be buying it, and we're basically like, screw you. And there's been talk like I think Paizo is it that is creating their own gaming license, open gaming license, and other companies are taking other steps. And there's been something of a movement to cancel your D&D, what do you call it? The D&D portal, D&D Beyond, to cancel D&D Beyond subscriptions, because apparently that's the thing they really care about. It's like with the streaming services, all they care about are the subscription numbers. So apparently now they've again, after that they went quiet again, and let me see. I think this is something new in this here. Okay, so the saga of the open gaming license for Dungeons and Dragons continues this morning as Wizards of the Coast break their silence to release an update on the OGL and the next step. So the past few days, we've been inundated with leaks about the proposed OGL 1.1, a revised OGL 2.0, and an FAQ document outlining some of Wizards of the Coast, and I'll just say WOTC, although I feel dumb saying that, but saying Wizards of the Coast over and over again gets a bit laborious. Some of WOTC directives related to the OGL. This statement is what many have been waiting for as third-party publisher and fan outcry has continued to escalate, with many rallying behind the banner of hashtag OpenD&D to force WOTC to see how damaging their intended changes would be on creators and the D&D community. WOTC don't give a flip. I got news for you. Okay, so what is Wizards of the Coast planning on changing with the proposed OGL 2.0? Early on in the post, early on in the post, WotC state, it's clear from the reaction that we rolled a 1. Okay, so they're talking about that first document, that first response. And with it, there are a number of changes that they are intending to make to the previously leaked OGL that will remove a number of the more controversial aspects of the new OGL. The changes that are going to be made are, and if I can move this, there's so many ads on this friggin' site. The new OGL 2.0 will only apply to content for tabletop RPGs, while live streams, cosplay, and more will be left as is. This post explains that while OGL 2.0 will need to be signed for third-party creators to continue making campaign and setting resources, but that other mediums such as educational and charitable campaigns, live stream, cosplay, VTT users, etc., will remain unaffected by any OGL update. This means content creators wanting to stream their own home games won't need to worry about any OGL 2.0 changes, and that larger corporations like Critical Role or Dimension 20 will not need to make any changes in regard to their video content creation. For Critical Role's publishing arm, Darrington Press, the OGL 2.0 will apply to future campaign or setting books. It's also clarified here that all products that have previously been released under OGL 1.0 will remain unaffected and continue to be sold as such. So I guess they're backing off on the retroactive portion of it. Wizards of the Coast will not collect any royalties from companies whose OGL 2.0 related products sell over a certain threshold. This is largely the biggest change. Previously, it was stated that any company whose OGL 2.0 related products generated over 750K in revenue would be required to pay 25% of what was above that threshold in a year to Wizards of the Coast. The initial leak of OGL 1.1 stated that it would be 25% standard and 20% if the revenue was attained through Kickstarter. And then in the leaked OGL 2.0 FAQ that released last night, it was changed to 20%. The complete removal of the royalty plan is a large plan and one that many small creators are likely excited to see. Creators will also be happy that WOTC has announced that any verbiage related to license back provision, where there was a fear that WOTC would have the ability to take and sell content that third-party creators had published under OGL 2.0, will be completely removed. Okay, so they're changing that as well. This means that under any new OGL, you will own the content you create. Wizards of the Coast won't. They state that the thought of taking others' work, quote, never crossed our minds. Yeah, and was intended to protect themselves and their partners from those who might allege plagiarism. The new OGL will contain verbiage surrounding this protection, but will remove the license back provision. So what to look for next with OGL 2.0? WOTC state that while OGL 2.0 was going to be officially revealed today with the reactions to leaks, plans of alterations, and the fast-paced landscape that this issue has created, they're going to take time to work and reshape it, which is probably just means we're going to get with our lawyers and figure out how we can change the language so that we can still do what we wanted to do, but without you realizing it. They state in the D&D Beyond post, much like they did in their FAQ to creators, that their plan, quote, was always to solicit the input of our community before any update to the OGL, which contradicts the information that we've seen this past week, including handing creators the OGL 1.1 to sign and giving them a 1-week deadline. It wouldn't make sense for a draft to be given a week's deadline for those creators to sign, especially as the blog post sets the expectation that the reveal was meant to happen today. The next step that third-party creators in the greater Dungeons and Dragons community will be holding Wizards of the Coast responsible for their words and ensure that if they state that the license back provision or the royalty plan are being removed from the OGL, that when it is publicly available, those changes have indeed been made. For the most part, this announcement seems to roll back pretty much all of the controversial aspects of the leak OGL, showing the power that the community has had with hashtag OpenD&D and the well-needed outcry of creators. What remains to be seen is how much of the community has WotC already burned too badly for these changes to make a difference. Well, you're I'm one of them, I can tell you that right now. Because it's not like this is the first time Hasbro has pulled crap like this. Back when Hasbro first purchased Wizards of the Coast, which I believe was in 2006, thereabouts. In 2007, I believe they put out, they very quickly put out Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition. And I've talked about this before. I think I talked about this in a live stream I did back in late November. But when they did 4th edition, they really changed it to make it much more of a combat game rather than a role-playing game. They really emphasized the combat system, which they had revamped a lot. And the thing was, they had this combat system that kind of required you to buy their figures, these miniature figures that they made. Now, figures have always pretty much been a part of D&D. I mean, it grew out of wargaming, which uses little figures. So that's not unusual, but it was always a optional thing. It was never something you had to have. And in the 4th edition, they were pretty much making it necessary that you had to buy figures, and not just any figures, you had to buy their figures. So now there's all this material, all these figures you have to buy to play the game that you didn't need to have before. And then there were all these like tokens you could get that were related to the figures somehow. I don't know. I never played it. I just read about it. But at the time, it really left a bad taste in my mouth because it was just such an obvious cash grab, and a lot of people didn't like it. And fourth edition did not sell well at all. And they subsequently kind of did a mea culpa and said, okay, we realize we screwed up. We're going to work on a new edition. We'll take time to sort of gauge what the community wants, figure out what our customers want, and what they want from previous editions that they want to keep and what they want to get rid of and all that, and make a better product that you'll like, which at the time was called D&D Next is what they were calling it at the time. And this is around 2009, 2010, I think, somewhere around there. And a couple years later, which I think it was around 2011, 2012, maybe 13, they published fifth edition, which is what D&D Next became. And I never got fifth edition. Um, well, let's just say I never, yeah, let's just say I don't have it. And I haven't role played in a long time actually, but from time to time I would think, should I get fifth edition? Because it seemed like people liked it. It was fairly popular. The response overall seemed to be pretty positive. But I was just busy with other things and never really got around to it. And now we're back after about 15 years, we're back to this crap. We're back to they're trying to screw us again, trying to screw their customers. Because what this OGL is all about is, and it goes into the whole one D&D shift, of them taking the game online into an online virtual space. Again, they want to basically, it's the whole thing, you will own nothing. You will own nothing and be happy because, again, these are Microsoft people running the show here. And back in the 90s, Microsoft and Apple and these other companies, of course, they produced a lot of software that was sold, on discs, on DVDs. And they realized they were losing a lot of money because obviously one person could buy a copy of, say, Microsoft Office and then could, load that on their computer, but then they could give it to another person. That person could load it on their computer, and you could have a lot of people using the same license. And so they were losing a lot of money that way. And so what they eventually did was decide to move away from physical media, away from DVDs and whatnot, and go to not software as a product, but software as a service, as a subscription that you would buy. And everything would be online, virtual, and you have to sign up for it because that way every person's going to have to sign up more or less separately. You're not going to be able to share these subscriptions. And that's what they're doing with D&D here. They're trying to move away from the books. Now, I'm not saying the books are just going to go away completely. I'm sure they'll still exist in some form or another. But um, but basically, they want to move everything online again, so that you have to pay and keep paying like every month. It's a subscription, so every month you keep doling out money to play the game. And also, you'll have to pay to access the rules, and you'll have to pay for all the latest expansion sets and all that crap. And another thing what they want to do in this one D&D thing, this virtual tabletop they're wanting you to play on is figures. You can create and sort of custom design your own figures. And of course, for every little change you make, you want a particular sword. Okay, that's a little more money. You want a set, you want bracers +2 protection. Okay, that's more money. As it's been described, and I've said myself, it's basically microtransaction heaven, and they'll nickel and dime you to death with this stuff if you let them. And they basically want to move everything online, and then they want to use this OGL to basically eliminate their competition, to run all the others out of business, so that the only place you can go and the only way you can play D&D is to sign up for their service and pay them every month. I mean, that's ultimately what this is all about. They don't give an F about the other, third party companies. They are looking to put them out of business. That's what this was. and they're not going to just give up. They're not going to just go, oops, sorry, we tried. They may wait a few years. I don't know. Like I say, it's like other people have compared it, and I think it's a good comparison to what, who was it, a PayPal, this past summer. There was a point where they were making this change of their terms to service where they could, I believe they could fine you like a couple of $1,000s, and maybe even, I think, maybe freeze your money if you were receiving payments from a platform or from some entity that they found, objectionable, problematic. Problematic, of course, defined by them. So basically, if you're taking money from someone that we don't like, we're going to take it from you, basically. And of course, that got people a lot of people upset when it came out, and there was a lot of pushback. And so they said, "Oops, oops, sorry, we made a mistake. Sorry, we aren't going to do that." And then the furor died down, and then like a few weeks later, they just did it anyway. They just made the change anyway, but they did it quietly while no one was looking. And that's probably what is going to happen here. They're going to bide their time a little while and wait till people have forgotten about this and moved on. And then they're going to try and put this stuff through anyway, somehow. And they may not do it all at once. They may just try to do it step by step, like a little bit here, a little bit here, drip, drip, drip until they get to where they want. But they're not going to stop. They're going to keep at it. Now, let's see. Was there any other articles on this that I wanted to share? No, I've got some other articles here, but they pretty much all say the same thing. So I'll probably go ahead and stop with that. So okay, that's gone. So what you're looking at here is them, again, it's saving face for now. And having covered that, what thing I wanted to talk about next, and that's part of the reason why I decided to cover this for my live stream, is I'm actually reading a book right now that is about the history of TSR, which is, of course, the company that originally published D&D, and it's called Slaying the Dragon by Ben Riggs. And I got it as a Christmas present, and I meant to read it and get it done over the holidays, but I didn't. But I'm going to go ahead and kind of go through the book and talk about some of the more interesting points that come up in this book. Now, I knew a lot of the information in this book already. I've read a couple of different books about role playing and about D&D. The first one was of Dice and Men, which is a book that I read back probably around 2010, 2011. That was where I heard about the D&D Next thing. That was the final chapter in that book, and that book was specifically about the history of Dungeons and Dragons, the game, and it also covered kind of the history of how role playing first began and all that. And it was a really interesting book. And then I read another book called Empire of Imagination, which was a biography of Gary Gygax, who, of course, is one of the creators of Dungeons and Dragons. So a lot of the information in this book, particularly in the early chapters, is a lot of the stuff that was covered in those books, and I kind of already knew it. But I did think that I would talk about some of the more interesting stuff in the book. And let's see here. Okay, and so let's just talk about how it all started, more or less. So, role playing as a hobby, how it began. Of course, Gary Gygax wrote and published the rules for D&D, but the whole story is, of course, a little more complicated than that. So, uh, Gary Gygax, I think around 1970 or so, he was an avid war gamer, right? And he created this set of medieval wargaming rules called chainmail. And of course, there were rules for medieval combat and war games already, but he made some changes. And one of the interesting innovations he made was that he made rules for having individuals fight each other. Because before that, wargaming was all about massed units, about divisions and squads and platoons and all that stuff. It wasn't about individual soldiers fighting each other. So the individual combat between different soldiers or knights or whatever was a new wrinkle. And he also actually had a supplement by which you could involve fantasy rules, like putting dragons and stuff like that. It was basically kind of a prototype of D&D in some ways. Now, around this same time, or maybe a little bit before, over, I believe, in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, there was a wargaming community there as well. And there was a guy who was running a war game called Braunstein or Braunstein. I'm trying to remember, guys. David Wesley. So this is the guy's name. This guy, war gamer in Minneapolis named David Wesley. He created this fictional European town called Braunstein, and he used it as a setting for wargaming. And the big innovation that he sort of came up with when he was doing this is he created the idea of role playing, that you could play first you could play individuals, not just units, but that the person, the war gamer, the gamer playing could actually act out these roles and make decisions for the character and stuff like that. And it caught on and became popular. And I think, the wargaming community was a fairly insular one. Oh, hey, J Man. Thanks for stopping by. Yes, I am very much into D&D. I started playing D&D in 1978. And I played pretty regular from 78 to about 88. By then I was in college, so I played kind of sporadically through college. After college, I stopped for several years. And then in the early 2000s, when, the Lord of the Rings games and everything were out, Lord of the Rings movies were out, I got into it briefly for a little while with third edition and all that, but I just had a difficulty keeping a gaming group together. And I really haven't played actually in a long time. I haven't played in over 15 years. So where was, yeah, so David Wesley. So he created Braunstein, and now the wargaming community was kind of like a small community. And one of the guys who was into wargaming in Minneapolis was a guy named David Arneson. And Arneson started employing J-Man. I started with the red box. Okay, so you started what, around like 83, 84 probably? Then stopped forever, then got back on 3.5, skipped 4. Yeah, I already talked about 4. If you want to watch the early part of this, I I gave my opinions on 4. I was not a fan of 4th edition. Back in with 5e, I play twice my. Okay, so you're playing now. Okay, cool. Um, hey, I tell you what, J-Man, if you want, I can DM you a link if you want to come in and join me. So just let me know and I'll send it to you. So anyway, Arneson, he started using this role-playing idea for his games, and he was using chainmail. So he kind of combined them. He took the chainmail rules and combined it with role-playing in this fictional setting that he called Blackmoor, which is arguably the first D&D setting. And he was playing this stuff, and of course, there were wargaming conventions where wargamers would congregate, and one of those was Gen Con, which was a convention that Gary Gygax had established in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And through these conventions, I think Gary became aware of Arneson and of the whole Blackmoor thing. Um, okay, Jay, man, I'll give me a minute here. Let me get into Twitter and I'll send it to you. And so eventually the two of them collaborated, and he had Arneson provide him with his rules, what he had come up with for Blackmoor. And I mean, to hear to hear Gygax tell it, that basically it wasn't much. It was basically very kind of a mess. He wasn't really good at keeping records of his rules and stuff like that. Again, I don't, there's different views on that. I can only guess as far as who's telling the truth and who isn't. So on Twitter, are you J-Man on Twitter? And but anyway, and using that information that Arneson gave him, he wrote up a set of rules which would eventually become Dungeons and Dragons. Let's see, and then okay, and so then we need to talk about Spectacular J-Man. Okay, let me look you up here on Twitter. Spectacular J-Man. Okay, I see you. Okay, let's see if I can. Okay, give me just a sec here, and I'll send one to you. And Twitter's moving slow. I apologize. Let me. Oh, there you are. Okay. Okay, let me send you an invite here. So you'll need a few minutes to get set up. That's fine. I can talk a little more. Okay, so let's talk for a minute about how TSR was first established. So Gygax, he sent this sort of prototype set of rules to a bunch of his fellow wargaming friends, and after a while, he was getting a lot of feedback from them, and he realized that he had something. He was onto something here. And eventually he decided he wanted to start a company, but he was basically broke. He, as his son Ernie Gygax says in the book, I mean, they were basically living in poverty. They never had a lot of money, and his father, I think, had been working as like an insurance, something with insurance involving the local like firemen's union or something like that. And he got fired from that because he was using like company equipment to photocopy like game rules and stuff like that, and he got caught. And so they were living on welfare, and this is back at a time when welfare didn't pay like it does now, didn't pay as much. And so he basically needed financial help. Now he had a friend named Don Kay, and Don Kay and he were like had been friends since they were little kids. They were lifelong friends. And so Don Kay actually took out a loan on his life insurance to fund the company. Now it wasn't going to be, I think, enough initially, and so there was another guy, Brian Bloom, and I think he was a friend of Kay's. Like he wasn't directly a friend of Gygax's. I'd have to go back and check. But he offered to put up some money too, and they went to Brian Bloom's father and convinced him to put up some money. Now he did it, but in return, I believe they wanted to be a shareholder in the company. So originally, the way it was divvied up is there were three shareholders in the company. There was Gygax, there was John Kay, and there was Brian Bloom. Now, sadly, Don Kay died just a few years later of a heart attack. Died very young, very sad. Um, Now, when he died, of course, his wife had not been a fan of this whole venture. She didn't like Dungeons and Dragons. She didn't like Gary Gygax very much either. And really, once he died, she wanted no part of it. And so she apparently, I guess, made it known she was willing to sell her shares. But Gygax, unfortunately, did not have the money to purchase the shares. So uh, Brian Bloom's father bought the outstanding shares, and eventually he would pass those shares on to his other son named Kevin. So in the early days of TSR, you basically had this threesome that was running the company, Gary and then the two Bloom brothers. And of course, they had more shares than he did. And so, again, it sort of depends on whose version of events you believe, but generally it seems like they really pretty much controlled the company because whenever they put a vote up between the three of them, the two brothers, of course, would always side with each other against Gary pretty much. And that would come back to haunt the company. Let's see. Now, another thing, of course, is if you look at the early versions of D&D and look at the rules, you will never see any mention of role playing because at that time, the term role playing had not been created yet. Now, as I understand it, for the term role playing, so in the early days, there's another gaming company called Mayfair Games, and they started this series of supplements, role playing supplements called, or what they called role playing supplements, called role aids. Of course, a play on the term role aids from the medication. But and when they oh, okay, there's J Man. Let me bring him in here.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello there. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me on. I can't stay too long because it's a bit late. But I usually go into like lurking mode when Klobby starts his thing, his Saturday.
Oh yeah, sure,
But
sure. I understand. I'll be done about 8:30 though.
all right.
But anyway, thanks for stopping by. So you've been playing since Redbox, you said?
So well, I was playing. I wasn't DMing at that point, but like everyone knows, that's I think that's the Elmore cover, right? Like that's like the most famous,
Yeah, the Larry
uh,
Elmore one. Yeah.
which is like my background right now on my desktop. So I played Redbox, and then I got out of it. And then the next one that I bought myself was I don't remember who did the cover for it, but I believe it's the cover. Did you get the D&D art book? It was like just a book, a hardcover book of just all the art.
Yeah, I remember what you're talking about. I don't think I've never owned it, but I remember looking through it.
Okay, so that's the cover of the box. I still have it, except it's in my storage because it came with like a map and it came with an adventure, and we played that. And I was DMing, and my first DMing experience was my buddy was like, it's right on his turn. He's like, okay, I'm locking all of you guys in the dungeon. I'm running away. I'm like, really? I'm like, it's a team effort. So it's like, you're never playing D&D again. I'm done with you. Uh, and then I played for a long time, and then 3.5 came out, and that's when I hit it really hard with 3.5.
Okay.
And my wife was, well, my girlfriend at the time, now she's my wife, she was playing, and then we stopped for a while, got back to 5e, and now we're hardcore doing it. But the thing is, I started with Redbox. I went to Drive Through RPG, and I bought all the PDFs. I actually paid for them. I didn't pirate them. I bought all the PDFs for all the Redbox stuff. Like there's like those six books or whatever it is. I bought all those, and that's what we've been playing. We played that for a while because I had a couple of newbies who haven't played before, and I was running 2 sessions, and then we stuck with that for a long time, and then now we're playing Spelljammer. But
the new version, I guess, right?
well, yeah, the new version, but not really. I've homebrewed the living crap out of all. Like, even when we were doing the red box, we just did like there's no THACO. Like I've been doing red box, I've been doing alternating red box and Spelljammer, and when I do red box, it's really just my conversion. I just got rid of THACO because I know that my friends are not going to get that. Um, I understood nothing of THACO at
Yeah.
all. We kind of just made up our own because when you're a kid, you're just like I'm 45, so I don't know like where that puts me in the demographics of D&D. But like when I was a kid playing, I'm like there was no internet for me to go look and see how to
Right.
play this. Like I had to figure it out, and it's hard. Like it's hard. It is complicated, and people think it's a board game. Like they think like Raquel and Klobby, and they like Raquel's saying, "Oh, I want to play." I'm like, well, it's not a rule. It's not like a set game. Like you could buy adventures and modules, but like I have to write something. So it's like we have to kind of. It can't just be like, yeah, we'll play for a couple of hours and then that'll be it. It's like, well, if I'm going to make like a storyline, then we're going to need. I can make a short storyline and maybe do 3 sessions or something or whatever. Whatever. But
Uh-huh.
it's tough, right? So people think it's a board game. Like they're just like, okay, I what are the rules? What do I have to do? And then I win. It's like, well, no, not really. But so now with Critical Role and all these other mega things going on, I guess people can learn it quicker. But yeah, we're doing Spelljammer right now. We're playing it this Monday. Spelljammer this Monday. It's my 8th adventure running Spelljammer, and the only reason I picked that is that my wife saw the plasmoids, and she's like,
Oh yeah.
"Oh, you could be like a Jello kind of creature." I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh, we have to play that." I'm like, "That's it." But prior to that, she was a cleric, and with Redbox, there was no like a cleric. Like you're just a cleric. You're not a human. Technically, I guess you're a human cleric, but there was no such thing as like a
Right.
dwarven.
All humans were clerics. Yeah.
Right, right.
Or
All
all
cleric.
clerics were human. I mean.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And a dwarf was a dwarf. That is what your class/race. Like there wasn't an idea of a race. I wonder when
Right.
did that must have been the next edition, right? That
Uh,
changed that. Or
when
was that
they
AD&D?
well that changed with AD&D.
Hmm.
So it's um, they came out. I mean, when Basic and Advanced came out, for like general retail, they came out about the same time. I think Basic came out a little earlier. I
Right.
think. I started playing in, I guess, probably in late '78 was when it was. I had moved into a new neighborhood, and I met a kid, and he had basic D&D, and he introduced me to it, and
Right.
I got that. But by the end of that year, or well, maybe not that year, it was either. I think it was like the end of that year. Yeah, it probably was. We were playing advanced because, of
Right.
course, in basic you could only go up to third level.
Right. They did it. Yeah, there was like an expert. Wasn't there? Okay, so is that the Moldvay like that famous it just says basic Dungeons and Dragons, and it's the
Um,
Moldvay and
it's
what's the other
before
guy's
the
name?
it's before the mold day. It's the Holmes version
Oh,
is what
geez,
it's
that's
called.
awesome, man.
It's
That's like the real D&D. That's like,
yeah, it's like the original set. It's
oh,
basically when they first started publishing it, it was that Holmes set, and they
yep.
had the adventure in it was B1 into the unknown.
Oh
And
my
then
God.
after about 6 months, they changed it to Keep on the Borderlands.
Yeah, keep on the Borderlands. Yeah, I've got that. I bought that on drive through. I haven't tried it yet though.
Yeah, and like I say, I think D&D had been out maybe. I mean, as far as like for general retail, obviously the game had been around since '73 or so, but it was only available through like mail order, or you had to be at a gaming convention to get it. You couldn't
Right.
just go to a store. And it'd
Was
been
that
around
the
for like a year and a half when I started playing.
right? So that was those three. There was like three separate little. They looked like just photocopy books or something. It was like, is
Yeah,
that what?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's the original rule set. Yeah,
Right. Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
yeah, and but of course, the whole reason they created advanced D&D in the first place was basically because when they were selling D&D, they had brought Dave Arneson on to work at TSR,
Hmm.
and eventually they fired him. And there's different versions of why he was fired. I'm not going to go into all that, but the bottom line is he left. Now, of course, when D&D started making a lot of money, David Arneson, said, well, you used a lot of my ideas to create this game. I should be getting some royalties for it at least.
Mm,
And he took them to court, and eventually, the court sided in his favor and said, okay, he can have, I forget the percentage, but he was getting a certain percentage. I think it was like 2.5% of all profits from the sale of D&D or something like that. So Gary Gygax created Advanced D&D basically because he was trying to get out from under that royalty. He didn't want to pay
right.
artisan royalty. So he created Advanced D&D, arguing, well, this is a whole new version of the game. He didn't have any involvement in it, so therefore we don't have to pay him any royalties.
Right.
Of course, the courts didn't see it that way, and he took them to court again and got royalties anyway. But yeah, so you had Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and then you had the basic set, but um, that red box set was really immensely popular. That was when
Yes.
D&D really kind of exploded into the mainstream, because it was like around 82, 83, because you had, well, first of all, and I don't think people give this enough credit, but in E.T., which came out in the summer of 82, there's a scene early in the movie where Elliot's older brother and his friends are playing Dungeons and Dragons in the
Yep.
movie.
I
And
remember.
and then you had the cartoon come out, and and then that red box came out around that time, so you just had that kind of explosion of popularity right around that time.
Right. Well, I mean,
And
the red
so
box just looks cool. Like it's like you're like,
yeah,
yeah, this looks bad. Like to me, that's still the best. It's my background on my monitor right now, like as my desktop wallpaper.
yeah,
Like,
that Larry Elmore arts really
oh,
sells it.
oh my
and
God.
and then and that basic set was so immensely popular that they continued the line with, I think, was it Expert and then
Yeah.
Master, and I
Uh,
don't know all the other sets, but there was like 5 of them.
yeah, I got them all. It's like, yeah. So it's like I could even, yeah. So it's like Masters. What was it? Yeah. I renamed all the PDFs because I literally bought everything. I'm like, well, you know what? Let me just buy it all. You don't even need all that. I think sometimes the rules have gotten so crazy now where there's like you have to read 300-page books to and you're like, I just wanna like fight monsters. Like what happened?
So,
It's just
what's your
like people
take
get
on the
turned off.
whole? I'm sorry. What's your take on the whole
OGL.
OGL controversy?
Oh well, okay. So I mean, I watch a lot of these channels, and I don't know. Like, so you as I was listening to you talk, I was like, wow, you really got all the history down. I don't really know all of that. I'm coming just from the player's point of view. So for me,
Uh,
it's like I would think that if the original OGL was supposed to be in place to say, you know what, you can use our rule base and you can make your adventures and publish your stuff. And the whole point of it in my mind was that if I make an adventure and I publish it and I put the OGL on it and say, yeah, use the D&D rule set to play my adventure. That's cool. And I think that's why like TSR failed. And I know they got some, I don't remember the names, but somebody had to go and kind of research why TSR failed. I know that book came out recently talking
yeah,
about it. And it's like,
I'm reading that book right now. I'm
awesome.
actually reading stuff out of that book, actually.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So didn't the guy do research and realize that, yeah, TSR kind of just failed because, it was just, there wasn't enough people doing things. Like, I mean, this OGL seemed to open it up. So it's like all of a sudden it's like anyone can start, creating their little adventures and selling rules or modifying things. And it seemed to get more people in. And I thought that was the point of it. But then now, it's a corporation. Once Hasbro or whoever's, I don't know who's the head of it, is Hasbro still? I guess Hasbro
Has
owns it.
Yeah, Hasbro.
Hasbro. Well, look, Hasbro's trash, right? We don't we know they want money.
They
So
are to
they're
me, yeah.
right. So we know they want money, right? Like that's just how they work. And now this when I heard microtransactions or whatever it was the other, I don't know, it's like a month ago, and they're like the CEO was like, yeah, we want to have more, we want it more
Right.
like those video games. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
that's not going to go down.
I was talking about that earlier before you came on, but that's
Yeah.
pretty much what I was talking about, the OGL and the controversy, and about the microtransactions and how they want to move everything online
Right.
and make it this subscription that you have to sign up for. And the whole purpose, I believe, of this OGL originally, and I don't think they're giving up on it. They may have backed off for a while, but they will try this again eventually, is to
Hmm.
basically drive their competitors all out of business
Right.
so that eventually the only way you can play D&D is to sign up for their subscription service and pay them a certain amount every month. And again, like you say, they'll be microtransacting you to death, nickel and dime you to death
Right.
with like, okay, here's a figure. You want a figure in the virtual tabletop? Okay, that's more, cha-ching. You want it to
Right.
have +2 bracers of defense? Cha-ching. You want it to have
Right.
a firebrand sword? Cha-ching, and on and on and on.
Yeah. I was explaining to my wife what was going on because she's just a player, right? And she's been playing. We've been married 15 years, and you were about 5 years before that, so we've been playing D&D together from that time. And to her, I was like saying what basically, because she's a plasmoid now. I said, so you're a purple plasmoid. I said, so let's say if you wanted to have your character appear on the virtual tabletop with me DMing, let's say the plasmoid is green, and you're like, yeah, but mine's a purple. Okay, so now, oh, it's $1. You pay $1 or 50 cents, and now you can have a purple version. And then if you want, because she's a monk, she's a plasmoid monk, so it's like, okay, well, do you want it to look like a female monk? Okay, that's another $1, and that's
Right.
how they're gonna get you with these little skin changes and colors. And you, oh yeah, as you said, you want a cool sword. Okay, well, the sword is 10 cents. And but the thing is, for me, is that like what these guys aren't getting is that I don't need the virtual. I'm not signed up for D&D Beyond. I don't need the virtual thing. I don't need anything. I literally play. I don't even use miniatures or anything.
Oh, really?
Um,
Okay.
yeah, we would do. I did use miniatures because I own Hero Quest. I own what was Dragon Strike. I still have the VHS tape. I own like so many board games. I had Battle Masters. I still have Battle Masters, that big huge board game that was like a mat, like you rolled out a carpet to play on it. So I had miniatures all over the place, which I would use. But then I was like, I don't really need any of this, and I don't really have anything that matches the character. So I'm like, screw it. I literally play through StreamYard. I actually play through StreamYard. So Monday I'll send the link out, and I just won't record it. I'll just play.
Oh, okay. So you are playing online though. You're
Right.
not using D&D Next, but you or D&D Beyond, but you are online with it.
Online, just talking. It's literally the way we're talking right now. I don't even use screenshots. It's the way. So I'm like, okay, guys, you entered your, right now they're in this other dimension. So that's going to be happening tomorrow or Monday night. And because it's Spelljammers, they can go everywhere. But even if I was playing face to face, like I was running Dark Sun, when I was running Dark Sun last year, I just had literally, I put a desert, like I bought like a desert colored fabric, put it on the table. I put a skull in the middle. I put some candles around. I put some bones and weapons around just for the ambiance. And I actually had the Dark Sun. I just found a video on YouTube that's just a red sun that continuously loops. I put that on my phone and put that up on like a tripod. So that's the sun. And then I just played like that, and pencil and paper, no miniatures, no creatures on the board, no, not even map. I don't even use maps. It's just like, you go north. Okay, you went north. Like, who cares? So for me, I homebrewed the crap out of everything to the point where that's just what my players, I've got about 6 to 7 people that I rotate around, and they're used to it. And they're like, yeah, they're like, nobody's going to go to D&D Beyond. They're like, oh, Jay, are you doing it? I'm like, no. They're like, well, we're not doing it. I was like, right. So that's it. It's like, I'm running this thing. You could go on D&D if you want. You can go on Beyond if you want, but I won't be there. So,
So you're pretty much doing like theater of the mind kind of
yep,
thing. Really?
that's
Okay.
what it is to
Um,
me.
and honestly, from what I've read in some of these books I've read about the early days, that's very much how Gygax did it. He just would sort of describe the scene or whatever. There was no maps, no figures or anything. So is that, as far as doing it online, was that the preference you guys had, or did you need to do that in order to be able to meet and
That
do
was, yeah. Everybody wants to meet up in real life here, but here's the problem. Like, I got a day job. You've got your YouTube channel now, so you're doing streams, you're doing
it?
videos,
Right.
you're producing stuff. So Monday, every once a month, I'm on Klobby stream on Monday nights. So the other days I'm doing D&D. Tuesdays I got my stream. Wednesdays I got a stream on another guy's channel. Like it, right? It's like every day I've got something. So when are we going to meet? So I just said, guys, can we just do Mondays? What's your work schedules like? Everyone's got day jobs. Like, yeah, we're all done by like 5 or 6 o'clock. I'm like, why don't we start at 7 p.m.? 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. We do 2 hours every other Monday. And they're like, yep, that's perfect. And that's it. It's just for convenience. I send the link just the way you did. They come on. They have their avatars. Like I can change my avatar, to like what I have a D&D symbol as my avatar when I do it. That's it. There's not even, I don't even put pictures up like how you can put a picture up in front for StreamYard.
Uh-huh.
I don't even do that. I don't put anything. I just talk. That's
Okay.
it.
So is D&D all you guys play? Do you play anything else?
Um, just D&D. And that, well, I do board games at my buddy's place and stuff like that, but no other role playing. Actually, that's a lie. I was doing Musketeers. I love the Three Musketeers, the stories, all the shows and stuff. And have you heard of? They had one called Regime Diabolique or something. I can't remember. It's Three Musketeers. It's
Uh-huh.
Ubiquity system, so it's like a dice pool. So it's
Is this a fairly recent one, or is it like
yes,
an older game?
yes, yeah,
Mm.
regime, yeah, and basically it's Three Musketeers with gothic horror. So Cardinal Richelieu is actually a demon, and that's the main adversary of the entire thing. So you can never fight him, but and there's werewolves and there's cults and there's like vampires. So it's gothic
Cool.
horror meets musketeers. So I used to run that, and then I've never played as a player. I've always the dungeon master. So my buddy is like, why don't I run musketeers? Because it's very easy to run. It's not like D&D. The rule book's very easy.
Huh.
So I get to play as a musketeer. And I get really into it because like I don't get a chance to play, so I'm like role playing the crap out. Like most of my friends just kind of say what they want to say. They're like, "Oh, I'll say this." Like, say it in your character. They're like, "No," they're a bit shy. But when I do it, I'm like, I'm the musketeer. I'm like, "Vive la France" and all that.
Well, I know there was a kind of like musketeer thing game. I think it was called All for One
That's
or
it. That's the
something
one I'm
like.
talking about. That's it.
Oh, is that it? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. All
I've
for
never
one.
played that, but it looked it always looked interesting to me because honestly, as I've gotten older, if I were gonna role play again and get back into it, and significantly, I'd almost more want to do that, like do like a more kind of real world setting and just
Mhm.
have like really low magic and maybe like minimal like monsters. Like if they're monsters, it's just going to be like undead and stuff like
Right.
that. Like not like cities of orcs and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, this one and this company also did Hollow Earth Expedition, which is basically like a pulp. So I ran that
Right.
one too. It's like a pulp style, so it's like Doc Savage Spider Shadow kind of a thing. But there's the
Yeah.
Hollow Earth. I was like, oh, this is cool too. So I bought that. Yeah, it's called All for One Day Regime Diabolique. And the other one is Hollow Earth Expedition. And yeah, minimal. That one's got more monsters if you want to, but the Musketeers one, I mean, you're fighting the Cardinals men, right? They give you style points, so because you're a musketeer, so like you'll do cool stuff, like maybe you're fencing a guy, and then you stop and take a sip of wine, and then continue fencing, and you can get style points, and that can add to your rolls. So it's kind of fun. Like it encourages you to to be fun, and you also get style points if you do things that are with your flaw. So every musketeer has a flaw, like maybe gambling, or depending on what your class of musketeer is. There's a guy who's like just like ambitious, and there's a guy who's impulsive. So like your flaw is that you're impulsive. So if you use your flaw in role playing, or in a setting or in a scene, you get a style point. So it's kind of cool. It encourages you to do fun things like a musketeer would, because the musketeers are fun. Like they'll say funny lines, and they'll jump around and swing and stuff. It's like, so it's kind of neat.
So, what's your favorite Musketeers movie? Which version?
Oh gosh. I mean, I like the Lester ones as a kid. I especially liked Four Musketeers. I don't know why that one. But
The
I
ones with Michael York
Michael York,
and all
yeah.
that. And I think Richard Chamberlain was one of
Yep.
them, wasn't
Faye
he? And
Dunaway, Oliver Reed.
Oliver Reed, yeah, he was one too. He
He
was
was
he was
Porthos.
Porthos, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
God, it's been
Uh,
a long time since I saw those, but I need to
um,
rewatch those sometime.
Yeah, I liked Man in the Iron Mask, which was the DiCaprio one, and it's not really based like all these. None of these movies are really the books, but like, I don't know. I kind of like that one, and just because Gabriel Byrne was in that as D'Artagnan, and he was like an older D'Artagnan, like it was like the
Uh-huh.
Musketeers were retired, and I really liked him a lot. Like usually I like Athos. He's usually my favorite, but in that one, I really like D'Artagnan. Like usually D'Artagnan, I'm like, yeah, he's okay, but he's our lead, he's our protagonist. But I usually like Athos, and but yeah, I don't know. I own a lot of them. I probably own like I don't know, 10 or 12, but I mean, there's
Oh,
4
wow.
million Musketeers movies, and there's like another one coming out with Eva Green playing Milady de Winter. That's coming out, and it's actually French. It's actually Frenchmen in the movie. The trailer just dropped like, I don't know, a few weeks ago, which is,
I didn't know about that.
yeah, that's crazy. Like they never make French. You never see French versions. It's always like the British versions of the Musketeers. It's like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah, that's true.
so yeah. So the OGL? I mean, I don't know. Well, you think it's gonna hurt? You think it's gonna hurt? Like, I don't know. Do you think it's gonna hurt anybody or people? Because I don't know. Like, it's not gonna hurt me. I don't care. I'm like, okay, I play
Right.
the way I play. I don't care about D&D Beyond. I don't need any of your digital tools. I literally play Redbox right now, and I have 6 people playing Redbox, and all 6 of them think it's awesome. Nobody's saying, "How come I don't get to be a dwarven cleric or a dwarf wizard?" Nobody cares. I'm like, here's who you can pick. Even when I play 5e, like I'm gonna start Dragonlance pretty soon. Um, I'm only going to allow sorcerer or fighter. That's it. I'm not even going to allow other like classes because I'm like, there's too many things. Like it's like ranger and paladin. And it's like, well, what is all this? It's like, look, are you a magic person or are you a skills person? Like, why do you need to have 400 classes? Like, it just got too weird for me. Like, that's why I go back to Redbox.
Uh-huh. Yeah, if I were gonna play, I would definitely go back more to a kind of older, sort of simpler version. There's a version of it called Five Torches Deep. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
you've ever heard of it, but
No,
it's kind of one of the like OSR type
right.
rules that's come out, and I think I haven't actually played it, I admit, but even though I don't play, I still buy lots of RPG stuff,
Mm-hmm.
just because I love reading RPG stuff for some silly reason. But and I really liked the way they set it up. It's I think it's a good blend of like sort of older sort of grittiness and also simplicity, but also kind of it uses the D20 mechanic, which I think is a big improvement on how the older editions did, with all
Mm-hmm.
you had to look at all these different tables, and THACO, as you mentioned, was like a nightmare
Yeah.
to deal with. So I
I'm
think
looking.
that
I'm
one's
looking at it
definitely
now.
worth looking at.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Five Torches Deep. Yeah, so this looks kind of like more simpler. Like there's one called Basic RPG. There's I know people play that. There's a lot of options. That's what I'm saying. I don't know this D&D Beyond. I think they're shooting themselves in the foot. This Hasbro because it's like if you're gonna piss people off, there's 4 million other options, and I don't need to go with any of your stuff. Like I can just and all of this stuff is on that drive through. I use that drive through RPG. I'm not affiliated with them, so it's not a plug. I I go on there and it's like $4 or $5. Like I bought the entire Redbox contents for like $20 or something, and that's Canadian. I don't know. I mean, I'm in Canada, so I don't know for you what it costs if you're in the States, but like it's cost nothing. So I can get, and they're good quality scanned PDFs, and I've actually printed them out, and you can put them in a folder or like in a binder. So what are you guys trying to prove here? Like you're just pissing the fans off, and
Right.
there's a lot of options. Like when back in the 90s, I was reading all the Dark Sun novels, or I don't know when they came out, maybe the 80s, but my mom used to go to these trade shows to sell other stuff because she was a salesperson, not for D&D stuff, but they did have D&D stuff there. So she would actually give me the retailers, like how the retailers get like a package or like a book of all the stuff coming out. She would get me those for TSR. So I would see all the product line for the next year in advance. Like she'd actually get me the
Oh,
books.
really?
Yeah, I think I still have a couple of them around somewhere. I gotta find those. They're awesome. So I would look and be like, oh yeah, oh man, Ravenloft, what's this? Like, holy shit, this looks crazy, right? So it's like I'd see all that, and it's like now everything I ever wanted is on Drive Through RPG for like $2 or whatever.
Right.
So
Yeah.
what do I need? I don't a Greyhawk, a Planescape, Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance. I got Spelljammer off of there too. What else is? It's like every single one of those Greyhawk. Yeah, it's all on there. So what do I need you guys for? That's if I don't need you, then you don't really have that's just me personally. I don't know if people feel they need to play 5e. Like I didn't play 5e because I have to buy new rules. That was like, that was literally my only reason. Hey, LT. LT just dropped in. What's going on? So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Classic, you there? Let us know in the chat if you can, because I can't hear Classic anymore. Oh, so Classic's computer just went down for a sec. So I'll I've taken over the stream. No. Hey, Lord Thoth, thanks for dropping in. We appreciate it. Hey, Mountains. He'll be right back. Yeah, that's cool. I was just saying that, like, with this OGL stuff, it's crazy for them to try to change this around, because there's so many fans of D&D that want to produce content, and the more content out there, the more people are playing the game, and the more people playing the game will eventually buy more and more actual, Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast products. So, and that's what happened with me, because I was playing D&D. I wanted to do 5e, so I was like, okay, well, I can grab the 5e rule book or whatever. And it's easy. It's easy that way, because if you get into it, let's say if you're watching Critical Role or something like that, and you want to get into D&D because you will like watching these people play it, you've got an avenue now. You can play their adventure and you can get the rules, and you might get into it that way. So I'm not sure how I understand they want to remove, quote unquote competition, but I'm not really sure that that's going to really matter, because you can't eliminate everybody. And there's so much old stuff. There's so much old content anyway that anyone can go and get stuff, right? So, like, you can just buy 5e if you really want to. If you don't want 5e, you can buy any of the older editions. They're all available through PDFs, and they're official, so you can actually buy official PDFs that look really good. Plus, you're not the only game in town. Like, when Dungeons and Dragons was really kind of the only role-playing game that was, of any kind of value, then yeah, it mattered, right? But now there's so many that it doesn't even matter. So, hey, your computer's updating classics. That sucks too. I gotta go in like a couple of minutes. I've got maybe 2 or 3 minutes before I gotta go. We're keeping the stream alive. But Mountains, what do you never played D&D or any RPG, but do enjoy following some campaigns on YouTube? Yeah. Well, the guys that you're following on YouTube, Mountains, of Elysium, I like that. The guys that you're following on YouTube are creating their own adventures, like Dungeons and Dragons. The rule set doesn't come with any sort of adventure. You can buy adventures, or campaigns is what they're called, or settings. You can buy settings, and then you can create your own stories. But me as a DM, I have to personally create a story. I have to actually create a story and then have my players play it. So the way it works is that a lot of these guys on these YouTube channels that are getting thousands of views, and have like, friggin' million subscribers, they make up their own story, make up their own characters, all that kind of a thing. And then if they want to publish that, like, let's say you watch some of the stuff on YouTube and you think, hey, that sounds like a cool adventure, I'd like to try that one out. You can buy their content, and they don't owe any money to Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro or D&D, whatever. It's the company. They don't owe the company. But now they're saying that if you make a certain amount of money, if you make $750,000, you have to pay them, I think, 25% royalty or something like that. I don't know the numbers exactly. And basically at that point, you're just like, well, I'm just not going to create that content. And then the problem is that these YouTubers, if they start saying, you know what, it's not worth it to me to create this story and put all this thought into it and write up, all this stuff, if I can't publish it as an adventure to sell, it's not worth it to me. So they might just stop doing it. They just might be like, well, you know what, we're not going to run D&D on YouTube anymore. We're going to have to just run, a different game. And now there are different games out there. Like, there's that Pathfinder. They've got everything you want. Like, G.I. Joe came out. I think Transformers came out. Marvel's bringing another one out. I used to play the old TSR Marvel. So Marvel's got one. DC, I'm sure, has something. We've got Musketeers. We've got Hollow Earth. We've got that Five Torches that Classic Comics mentioned earlier. There's so many options that you don't need to go to Dungeons and Dragons anymore. So I'm not sure what the purpose is and how that's going to actually serve them in any kind of way later on. It's just going to piss people off. And now they kind of backtracked because a lot of people were pissed off over this entire OGL 2.0 or whatever. And they're like, well, this kind of sucks. And I don't want to publish under this anymore. And, even if you tried to say, hey, you're back. Classics, are you back? Yeah, so you could say, well, if I don't want to publish under this new license, I'll publish under the old license, but the new license voids the old license. That's the other source of tension for people. So that's the other thing that's getting people kind of rubbing them the wrong way. So now we'll see what happens as we go. I suppose they're going to redo this license and try again. But yeah. So Classics, you're on mute. I am.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go. You're back. Oh, you're cutting out though. You sound like oh, it's got some weird sounds. It sounds like you're a robot now or something. You've been transformed. You're RoboCop.
I'm not.
Oh, you're back for a sec.
Okay. I tell you what.
There you go.
Okay.
You're good now. You're good.
I tell you what. I think you can hear me okay. I'll tell you what. I don't know what's going on. It's I'm plugged in, but it keeps saying that my battery is almost dead. So like 8:30 anyway.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
So I guess we'll just wrap it up.
Yeah. Yeah, you're cutting out like crazy.
That's cool,
I'll
man. Probably stop by Klobby's stream.
Cool. Okay. Well,
probably stop by Klobby's stream.
I can kind of hear you echoing a bit, but anyways, that's cool, man. Thanks for having me on. I'll see you on Klobby stream in about 15 or 20.
Good night, everybody.
All right. Good night.
Come on. Okay, well.